All right. I'm calling this meeting, the October 2nd meeting, to order at 4:04. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then before we do the call to order, we do the roll.
Well, I just mentioned Director Kick is joining us under SB 2449 under Just Cause for Childcare. She's going to stay on video through the meeting. We're good.
Perfect. Okay. Then roll call.
Okay. Vice Chair Branning.
Here.
Director Brown. Here. Director Halbert is not here. Director Josie. Here. Director Kick.
Here.
Director Testa. Here. And Chair Hernandez is absent.
All right, perfect. And then public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We did not receive any public comment via email. There's nobody here in the audience, but let me see. We have one person as an attendee. Did you want to speak? Raise your hand if you'd like to speak. The attendee? Nobody's raising their hand.
Okay. Then I will close public comment and we'll move on to the September Tri-Valley Accessible Advisory Committee minutes.
Great. And Zach Silva, who is the chair of our Tri-Valley Accessible Advisory Committee, will give you a report back of the September meeting.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors, staff. At our September Accessible Advisory Committee, we recommended revising our bylaws to show chair and vice chair elections on the first meeting of the fiscal year. We received information on the Wheels in Motion study. A lot of the committee members are looking forward to participating in the outreach events. And then we had our service updates and concerns portion of the meeting. Staff provided some information on old business updates and let us know about some new staffing transition happening with some of our partners. We also had one committee member who asked about the West Dublin bus stop reopening and was pleasantly surprised to learn that it was set to open on September 8th. And then our meeting adjourned at 4:30 on time.
Do we have any questions from the board? Or comments from staff? All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, we don't need a motion. Accept those minutes, do we? Moving on to item 5, the consent agenda. Does anyone have comments or any items they want to pull from the consent agenda? If not, does anyone want to make a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved. Brown. Second, Josie.
All right. Motion by Brown, second by Josie. Roll call, right?
Director Brown.
Yes.
Director Halbert is absent. Director Josie.
Yes.
Director Kick.
Yes.
Director Testa.
Yes.
Chair Hernandez is absent. Vice Chair Branning.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Moving on to item 6, approval of a resolution authorizing LAVTA to apply for the 2024 State Transportation Improvement Program funding for Atlantis facility construction. I believe staff has a presentation.
Very excited for Jennifer Yeamans to be back here in person. Just want to say yay, we're so happy you're back and take it away.
Well, thank you for just reading the name of this item. That was a mouthful unto itself. So this item is to approve a resolution so that LAVTA can apply for funding to advance the Atlantis facility construction phase. This requires the board to approve the attached resolution in attachment 1 prior to our submitting the application, which will be due, if recommended to apply, October 27th. So Finance Administration Committee did not meet this month, and so we are all going to look at it today for your consideration. Just by way of background, I think you know, as far as the Atlantis facility is concerned, the property was acquired many years ago. It's undergone piecemeal development over time. This funding has been available. A couple of years ago, we decided to try to advance the project farther by taking the design of the facility from 30% kind of schematic level design to a 60% design that would be potentially, could be considered shovel ready for construction phase. That work was completed in spring of this year, I think, finally, everything all buttoned up with a little more planning commission and everything. So staff believes that the project is ready to advance to construction phase, and so we're now much more proactively seeking out funding sources for construction. This opportunity, the 2024 State Transportation Improvement Program, is both a rapid fire and very complicated funding process in terms of how the projects are selected. So I just kind of want to provide that background in terms of why a resolution is being requested today. But the bottom line is we will be requesting $19 million from the 2024 STIP. The programming decisions will ultimately be made by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission in December, but it will be on the recommendation of each of the 9 Bay Area County transportation agencies, which for Alameda County, as I think you know, is Alameda County Transportation Commission. So MTC gives each county kind of a funding target to aim for. They solicit projects and then make recommendations based on a bunch of funding principles and project readiness parameters that they think will be result in the most successful project being funded. So that process will be undertaken with ACTC in this month, later this month. So this will all come, we will hear soon whether or not we're even being considered. But in the meantime, we are required, just based on the timing of how our board meetings occur, the November meeting would be too late. We're coming to you now very early in the process. The attached resolution just basically affirms that when we achieve a full funding plan, that we will commit to delivering the project, that we commit to various other kind of administrative roles and responsibilities that are outlined in the resolution. And it is this amount, as you can see under the fiscal impact portion of the staff report, the $19 million represents just about 23% of the total funding plan. So our hope with this is based on a relatively small amount of funding we've committed to date from our own local sources to kind of get the project the starting blocks. We would then be able to add additional funding commitments to make us then considerably more competitive for bigger state and regional pots, and federal pots down the line that are discretionary but also highly competitive. So that is sort of the background of the nature of this request today and where it is heading next. But all you have to worry about today is approving Resolution 25/2023, authorizing us to apply for $19 million in 2024 STIP funds. So with that, I will conclude my remarks and invite any of your questions.
I just have one. The report was very comprehensive. I appreciate it. What do we think our chances are? Ballpark, I'm not gonna hold you to anything. Do we think we have a good chance at this? Because it sort of feels like all the dominoes hinge on.
I don't want to point fingers at anyone in this room, but I myself don't sit on the Alameda County Transportation Commission.
Certainly, certainly.
But that being said, I believe that our advantages are this project's environmental readiness. There are a lot of environmental phase blockades that are being kind of moved out to the side for projects exactly like Atlantis because of the nexus with our zero emission fleet transition and the timing of that. As I think you're aware, the California Air Resources Board's Innovative Clean Transit Rule will require us to begin purchasing at least part of our fleet to be zero emission buses in 2026. That's the requirement year. By 2030, it will be 100%, and we have large bus purchases planned for those out years. Buses that we don't replace then are in service now. They will be aging in place, you can think of it as. So we do need this new facility in order to support this new fleet. And so this project is uniquely positioned to take advantage of some of those administrative streamlining now. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I have two additional questions, which you led into both of them. One is have we, I mean, you staff prepared talking points for the people that are, on this board that also are on, ACTC. Some of them are in the room, some of whom are not. I've seen head nods and that's good enough for me. Thank you.
We are just kind of figuring out how and when all of these recommendations could even be daylighted. So I think stay tuned for that. I think once we do know, regardless, the item will come to the commission. So I believe, you know, our local stakeholders should be aware of the need.
Right.
But this particular funding opportunity comes along every 2 years. And it's kind of just it's a big regional discretionary multimodal mishmash pot. So it's a bit of a scrum, but at the same time, it's a good time for projects that are well positioned to take advantage of the funding source and the timing can be successful.
Excellent. And then the last follow-up question that I have is, I'm sure you have a plan for us that will be coming soon. That's a contingency plan if we don't get this piece of funding. Yes?
The plan, and I think ACTC rightly has questions about that because that's really a requirement, right? And the short answer is we will continue to apply for these state and federal discretionary sources that can also fund this project. The need is not going away. Those funding opportunities will remain. They look particularly well-funded in the next few years. So where the intention is to leverage multiple funding sources, we need to take that big picture into consideration as well as the timing of our bus deliveries and when that's really going to happen. I like to say everybody wants to be the last dollar in and be the be the final blessing of a project turning into something that's really going to go off into a contract award. But particularly the federal government, the Federal Transit Administration wants there to be a nexus for a facility with our fleet. So we need to look very closely at that. And that is backstop, is keep doing what we've been doing, ask the state, ask the federal government, who have funding available for projects like this. They're just very competitive, so we don't have a lot of certainty.
Okay, thank you. That's the extent of my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Great to see you. And this is a big project, obviously a very important one. Even though I sit on wheels, I'm not exactly sure how I would verbalize justification for, even though I sit on ACTC, justification for this particular project. So I love the idea of really making it's just a bullet hit piece on why it's so critical, because we're going to be competing it for funding. Valley Link is obviously one of the ones you compete against, but it's not quite ready yet. So if we can be a little bit ahead of course, being shovel ready and all those good things, but I think it's helpful to appeal to, especially this East County leadership team that's on, but even everybody. I mean, when somebody's got a development project, they don't just go to one person, they go to everybody that's going to be a decision maker, even if it's a nice mailer piece, marketing piece about this is why it's so incredibly important and really taking hydrogen bus service to the next step is what we're talking about for zero emissions. And so I'd like to see a nice marketing piece there, but definitely tabletop conversations with executive director towards Supervisor Halbert, Miley, Mayor Marchand, and Mayor Hernandez, and even some of our city staff that I know you know. And I know this means it's a little bit of a sales job, but this a well-invested time could make a big difference. Some of the money that we allocate for ACTC is Measure BB funds. Does this fall under the Measure BB justification related to the voters?
Yes, I would say at a high level, the most crucial piece insofar as the Alameda County Transportation Commission's role with this project is that it is included in the 2020 countywide transportation plan on the 10-year priority project list. So this was discussed, the need of this project has been established for at least 3 years. They will be updating all of those scope and cost considerations this winter. So yes, it's eligible for that. It's eligible every time we come in for their comprehensive investment program, which is their Measure B or BB discretionary grant program. It is They don't often make huge, this size project funding available all at once. We have a little bit, as you can see on the funding table on page 3 of the staff report. We have $3 million that we got in the 2024 comprehensive investment program from ACT. So they're kind of in for a penny at this point. But we are going to keep taking these commitments and moving ahead with them, as I think is our intention. And we definitely want to support our local commissioners as best as we can.
Right, but, you know, we all benefit from this program, so I just think we have to get everybody on board because this is not enough to get the funding, and this is, whatever marketing piece you come up with for ACTC should be able to help justify other funding sources, not just this one, because it takes a big sales job, a big lift. Of course, part of ACTC is to balance funding, so they don't give it all to the east, they're giving it all to the south and the west, and there are many groups in that organization that are going, what about us? You're not giving us any money, so it's fought after fun. So, let's see if I had anything else. No, I think that's it. Thank you for questions.
Any other? Okay, then just really quickly, have we received these funds before in past cycles?
Yes, some of them I will look at tomorrow if I needed to, but we have gotten money from the STIP for various maintenance type projects, facility type projects. At a high level, you know, you're probably aware that we get a lot of, that, you know, we all pay gas taxes, money comes to the region on a formula basis to fund transit and roads together. Transit facility projects don't rate when it comes to formula funding that our gas tax is paid for. So we've always needed other fund sources to address our facility needs. This is no exception.
Okay. And then this is a pretty big chunk of the funding. You know, it's not all of it by any measure, but it's a pretty big chunk. If we do get this, since it is on a fairly quick timeline, does it change our timeline for the Atlantis facility at all?
I think the table on page 3 of the staff report does a pretty good job of summing up the story. But I think the short answer is yes, because as many state and federal funding sources are out there and trying to all coalesce and leverage along the same policies and priorities at the same time. In particular, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission is trying to find a way to fast track and endorse projects at kind of a higher level that have achieved at least a 30% funding commitment. If this were to push us over that 30% funding commitment, my view is that we would be far more competitive going forward. I think it would shorten the timeline.
Awesome. Okay, cool. That's all I have. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. It's great. And I think we need a motion.
Well, we do a public comment.
Oh, wait, sorry, public comment.
We did not have any public comment for this. There's nobody in the audience. Same for the consent agenda.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, keep me honest. All right, then we'll close public comment and the other.
I'd like to move staff recommendation for this item.
I'd like to second, I think the application for the STIP funding for Atlantis facility is going to be for the change of plans. So absolutely supported.
Awesome. Any further comment? If not, roll call.
Director Brown.
Yes.
Director Hubbard is absent. Director Josie.
Yes.
Director Kick.
Yes.
Director Testa.
Yes.
Chair Hernandez is absent and Vice Chair Branning.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, awesome. Thank you and good luck. Next up, item 7, fixed route passenger satisfaction survey.
All right, I'm gonna ask for the clicker if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yeah, did you want me to?
Should have
Yeah.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, I was gonna bring it up.
And Elizabeth and David send their apologies. They had a last minute meeting that was unexpected.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Today I'll be giving a very brief recap of our 2023 fixed route customer satisfaction survey. So jumping in, well, before I delve into the actual results, just take a step back and look at the overall purpose and methodology of the survey. So what is the purpose? So first and foremost, we have what are called service quality standards indices. which are baked into our O&M contract with MV Transportation. And so the results of this survey, which is done on an annual basis, will actually dictate whether or not they get this annual incentive payment. But beyond that, of course, it's just a way for us to do an overall temperature check to gauge our overall customers' experience. And this is for our mainline service, so just to note, this does not include school tripper service. It's another method and tool for helping us to identify any operational issues or challenges that may be impacting customer satisfaction or perception of customer satisfaction. It helps us make informed decisions by looking at data, hard data. Then also, in addition to measuring our service quality, we ask a number of demographic questions just to help us get a better understanding of any demographic shifts that may have taken place. Methodology. So this was a tried and true paper-based survey. We had a total of 301 surveys that were conducted. These were all conducted out in the field by our staff. They were mostly on the 10R and 30R or our trunk lines or rapid lines, but we did conduct surveys along some of the other local routes as well. So again, they were asked a series of service-related questions and asked to score each of those service quality areas. And it's important to note this is not statistically significant, but we do believe the sample is representative enough of our service that we actually made some good insights from this data. So moving on to the results, this table is in your staff report. If you see this table in the left-hand column, you can see each of the different service quality areas. Then we asked each respondent to score each area on a scale of 1 through 5, of course, 1 being low quality, 5 being high quality. And so here are the results. And of course, it's not working. Oh, there we go. Okay. So here you see the percentage for each service quality area of respondents that scored 1 through 5. Really, our overall target for this is greater than or equal to 4. And our average score for each of the different service quality areas was 4.47, so we did meet our target. In fact, if you compare it with 2019, which is actually the last year we conducted the survey, it's actually increased, albeit just a tiny amount, but still, this really indicates we are consistently providing high quality levels of service to our customers and riders. In the last column, you can see the trend from 2019. But again, I think the main takeaway is we are still continuing high quality service delivery, which is great news. If you look at the top 3 service quality areas where we scored the highest, this was, and I gotta read it because that's so small, feeling safe in riding the bus, drivers being helpful and friendly, and then our buses being clean and well maintained. The area where we actually scored the lowest, this was our bus stops being clean and well maintained, although this was our lowest scoring service quality area. I do want to note that it was still above the average of 4, so we're still doing pretty good in that area. So moving on, so again, in addition to the service quality questions, we asked a series of demographic related questions just to get a better understanding of our ridership as it stands today. So the first question I want to highlight was area of residence. As you can see here, 48% or almost half of respondents indicated that they lived in Livermore. This is and then followed by Pleasanton with 26%, a little over a quarter, and then Dublin 13%, and then 13% other, which is outside of our service area. The next demographic question we asked was, what was your level of income? And so this was actually a pretty surprising one. We found that an overwhelming proportion of respondents or our riders, almost 70% make $50,000 or less, which is that is low income. And so this is higher than 2019. And so what this tells us is we still have a large, overwhelming proportion of transit-dependent people, more so than we used to. And so it is critical that post-pandemic, now that we see this demographic shift, we really start re-engaging with our riders, with our customers, to see what do they want the service to look like. And that's exactly what we're doing with Wheels in Motion, which Chrissy will be touching on in short order. Age, we found this to be a pretty normal distribution here, although again, it's not including school trippers. If you added in the school service, I'm sure this would be 50% younger folks. And then this one was quite insightful as well. We asked them, what was the purpose of your trip today? So a large portion, of course, at work, they were commuting to their job. But one thing we saw was shopping was actually much higher than it has been in previous years. So believe it or not, a lot of folks are taking our buses, whether it's the outlets or Stonebridge or whatever, going out and shopping. And then, of course, school, which I'm assuming would be the 10 and 30, or most of our Livermore students. And so I believe that is the last slide. So I'd like to open it up for any questions.
I would just ask you to speak to one of the comments from the Projects and Services Committee about any differences between the cities, the different response rates between the 3 cities.
Yeah, so we actually did a breakdown of the scoring quality table by different cities, so Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore. We didn't really, it's all highlighted in the staff report, but we did not see anything, any major differences between the cities and how they responded to different service quality areas. So I just wanted to add that. That was a comment that was brought up in our PNS committee, and so we did do that breakdown.
Then, so I don't forget, I'll open it up to public comment first.
Anybody? We don't have any attendees through Zoom. I didn't receive anything via email, and there's still nobody here in the public.
Then I'll close public comment and turn it over to the commission. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
I'll wait for people who haven't seen it before, ask their question.
I've seen it before. Do you have a question?
I do. So did I understand correctly? You said that school trippers were not included in this.
They are not included in this report. They were actually scored and tallied separately. We're still kind of refining the results of that, and we can, you know, maybe send it out or do something, but yeah, they are not included in these results.
Okay, and I didn't quite catch it. You did it then separately.
Well, yeah, so we conducted a survey separately, and then we tallied them separately, and we actually, those take a lot longer to kind of refine and sort through. So we do have the results, but they were not included in this report.
And we'll see that one.
I don't think we formally added it to an agenda.
We
but
haven't,
definitely-
but we can definitely
Yeah.
bring that back to the full board.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
of course.
Or at least just send us the report.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go next. So you stated that MV is tied to a contract that was new to me. So they're the results is there a number that MV needs, and what is that?
I don't know the specific number. We have not done this since 2019. So I don't think we've actually done an incentive payment for this since then. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct, since we haven't done it.
I don't know the exact number, but I could get back to you. But yes, we have a provision in the contract that states as a result of this, depending on, I think it's if they get that 4, that average score of 4, then they get some kind of incentive.
Like a $500 or $1,000 bonus.
This is the drivers or the company?
This is the company.
Oh, $500. Well,
It's not as
the whole
substantial.
company.
Tomorrow may be able to correct
They
me.
might have a case.
There's several, there's accidents, there's customer complaints, there's mechanical measure, I mean, there's a whole index of factors in which we evaluate.
So when the bonus is paid, some of it goes to the company, but the rest is given to drivers and mechanics.
There we go.
There's a split. Oh, and admin, right, Julia? You guys get some too? They do too. So it is divided, so they have an incentive, and I'm gonna be honest, like, if we're taking a little while to tally, someone will let us know, hey, Christmas is coming up. And that's how I think of my Christmas, because they've gotten a bonus every year I've been here, just the amount.
So it probably is 4. It probably is right through 4.0.
Right, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, so it adds up, it ends up usually being a decent chunk of money.
Great. Okay, thank you. Second question, shelters. As I drove here, I went past an unsightly shelter in the Hacienda Business Park. And I know it was an item to be discussed. I don't know which shelters they're referring to, but we do have some that are plastic and they have stains on them, whether it's paint or something. Could be, I just hate them to be dinged for something that Hacienda in our case, City of Pleasanton. Then my last question is regarding grant funding, since you stated that most of the riders are transit dependent, even though it's not statistically significant. My question is if anybody in the room is aware that could open us up for additional funding because we are serving those that need the transit.
I would say, and I mean, Jennifer can step up to the podium, but I think any data that we have that we can point to speak to the demographic of the ridership being low income, I think that can prove to be very meaningful in grant applications. Since
we don't have concentrations of poverty in the Tri-Valley. We do not tend not to score as high as we could in those grants. But yes, I think this is great data. It's also aligns with many other transit agencies who are seeing a higher percentage of low-income riders post-pandemic as your typical white-collar commuters are able to telework.
Right, but I love the term transit dependent, because that means they really do need us, and so I went back. Okay, those are my questions, thanks.
Can I just dovetail on that? So are the students identified as, because they are low income without their parents? I thought that they could be used as.
So we do split up the students and our fixed route riders. Sometimes students don't know how much money their families make, so we don't find that data as reliable, but I'm not sure I would use the student demographic data as indicating financial need because they live with their parents.
But we're talking the passes.
Household.
Remember,
It's
not how some qualify for passes.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So that-
And so if I'm understanding the question correctly, the families of the low-income kids would qualify for the passes. And certainly we could speak to that as well, the percentage of low-income passes that we distribute in Pleasanton and Dublin as another data point on our applications.
I was just wondering, some groups are, regardless of their, I'll have to look into that a little bit more. There was something that I thought might be a fit for it.
Okay, we'll share anything that you can share that you think would help us be more competitive with our grants. We are all ears.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a question on the, first of all, thank you very much for providing the data on the specific cities. On the chart that talks about the quality ratings for Dublin, Livermore, Pleasanton, and then it compares it to the average. The average was all respondents, correct? The average that's there, not the average from the 3 cities?
That's correct, all respondents.
Right. So I just wanted to point out that we don't include in this particular column, we don't break out the people that said they were not from any of the 3 Tri-Valley cities.
That's true.
And there's a couple of the ones that I thought were interesting. Both overall opinion of Wheels and customer service staff friendly and helpful. The only way for that data to come up with that average means the small percentage that are from outside of the Tri-Valley cities rated as quite low compared to our Tri-Valley riders. Is that a true statement? I'm doing that math correct? I mean, I'm sorry, I should have asked, it should have given you a heads up, I might ask
It's
this
fine,
question.
I'm not even gonna try and do mental.
No, I
math.
think you're right. I
But
think you're
this
right.
makes sense, yes.
Yeah.
But if my math is correct, and
It's probably.
it usually is, the 13% that are other, and I know that not the exact same number answered every single question, but approximately 13% were other, so using that approximate number for each question, people outside of the Tri-Valley gave us an overall opinion of Wheels somewhere in the 4.25, whereas the other cities gave us a overall positives in the 4.5s, which I thought was an interesting data point and might be worth further looking into is why do people who maybe take a lot of transit agencies feel that we are not as good as the people in the Tri-Valley who might only ride Wheels think we are?
Perhaps they just got off the BART train.
Well,
Then they should rate us
perhaps, but I think
higher.
that would be rating us higher in that. So, yeah, I'm wondering if it's spilling over because they have an overall impression of riding the bus in general, because they're bringing other rides into it or whatever. And sort of the same was true for customer service response. It was also somewhere in the 4.28, I think, for other. So something that might be worth delving into to find out why that is.
And we'll look at our numbers too, just to make sure. we
Yeah,
didn't make an
yes,
error.
always check my math.
Yeah,
You never
yeah,
know.
no, it's we'll check that. That's a
Yeah.
great, that's a great catch.
I think in the other categories, it was somewhere within the range of the
Yeah.
other, of the Tri-Valley cities, but for those two,
Yeah.
it seems.
Which is interesting because as you encounter people who say ride AC Transit, I encountered many of them at the Splatter event. They're like, your buses are so clean, your buses, your operators are so nice, you
Right.
tend to get those accolades. So
And
yeah,
yet,
it is a little-
and for all of the individual categories, with the exception of the customer service one, they rated us fairly highly within all the other categories, but then they gave us an overall number that was lower than anything else. And also, it looks like Dublin residents are harsh critics, and I don't know why.
Your bus stops aren't clean enough.
So anyway, I appreciate the breakdown, it was more interesting.
Commissioner Kick, do you have anything? Then, yeah, I appreciate the data. It's always nice to see that we're doing a good job. I think the numbers bear out that we're doing a great job. I would say I do have some concerns on the amount of focus on 10R and 30R. I think, they are our most, as far as I know, at least they are the most written of the lines we have. But I do think it's important that we focus on some of the side routes to make sure we're getting, I don't know if it, actually, maybe you could speak to, did this have a representative percentage of roughly aligning with 10R and 30R about that many?
I don't think it was very representative of the actual ridership, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
If I can speak to this, I think the direction has been, giving staff the surveys and collecting as many surveys as possible. And I am much more interested in a more representative sample moving forward. I think I shared with the committee, we are working on a market research on-call contract, and we can hire surveyors to actually do a statistically significant sample of our ridership. And then, weekends, late nights, those are, riders that we should be talking to.
Because I think, I do think that the 10R and the 30R have a special place for a lot of people that might also bump up the numbers some overall for the system when we're really focusing on those two. And so getting a more representative sample, I think, will be important going forward. Other than that, keep up the good work.
I think we're going to work on a press release, highlighting our high scores. We'll be working on that this week.
You're rising score.
With a picture.
I would like to make a motion then to accept, if I understand staff's request, accept the findings of the LAVTA 2023 customer survey, customer satisfaction survey.
I'll second.
All right. Any further comment? If not, roll call.
Director Brown?
Yes.
And Director Hubbard is absent. Director Josie? Yes. Director Kick?
Yes.
Director Testa?
Yes.
Chair Hernandez is absent and Vice Chair Browning.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to item 8, information only item for the wheels in motion
Yes,
update.
great. It's a great segue. Jennifer, if you could pull up the slides. Thank you so much for being here today. I am going to give you a complete presentation on your Wheels in Motion public outreach campaign. So we'll go to the second slide. So this is the board's first official presentation about the Wheels in Motion outreach campaign. And so I'm going to spend some time with you today talking through each of the 3 different bus service scenarios, talk to you about our JIPA considerations, and discuss the public outreach that's been underway for the last almost month, then talk to you about our upcoming milestones, and then questions and discussion. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this? As you know, BART changed its service on September 11th. They are really wanting to respond to the changing travel patterns post-pandemic, where they're seeing no real growth in the San Francisco commuter market. They are seeing more ridership off peak and weekends. And so in an effort to provide more service to their riders, they pivoted their train schedule pretty significantly. They went from operating their trains every 15 minutes during weekdays and every 30 minutes on weekends, operating 20 minutes 7 days a week. So what that does for our line, which is the blue line to Dublin Pleasanton, instead of a train every 15 minutes, now we have 1 train every 20 minutes, but that's consistent 7 days a week. And this is a big deal for us, for our little system, because we built our entire network around connecting to that 15-minute BART train. So this gave us an opportunity to go back out into the community and check in and make sure that we have our buses going to the right places, that they operate the right span of service and at the right frequency. And so we named this effort Wheels in Motion. Kudos to Morgan, our intern, who's not here today, but she came up with the logo on her own. So this has been a very much a grassroots staff-led effort. I'm very proud of the work this team has done. Cyrus Cheek is not in the room today. He's heading to Sweden, but he is the mastermind behind these 3 scenarios. And so the team has turned this around in such a short amount of time, and it's just phenomenal work. Dave Mark, who just started, hit the ground running on his 3rd day wearing a blue shirt and outreaching to customers. So it's felt really good, and I've done as much as I can to help. So I hope you are pleased with what we've done. Next slide, please. So as noted, we developed 3 network options for public review. All are cost neutral. We directed staff to keep us whole with our buses and our operators and our hours. And in doing so, our staff came up with 3 options. The first is scenario 1, which is status quo, meaning it's, formalizes our current coverage and service levels and frequency, and then formally discontinues some of the routes that have still been suspended post-COVID. We still have a few that are operating a reduced service or are fully suspended altogether. Our second option is looking at how frequent can we be. So about 8 years ago, when we did the Wheels Forward comprehensive study, frequency was queen. That's what people wanted. They wanted frequent bus service, and that was driving ridership. So we wanted to check in to see, is frequency still queen in the Tri-Valley, or is coverage more important? And so our third scenario is coverage. It is basically reducing our most frequent services from every 15 minutes to match that BART schedule of every 20, which allows us to take those resources and reallocate them in other areas. So that's our coverage scenario. Next slide, please. So as noted, scenario 1, status quo, for routes and frequencies stay the same as they are today. Formally discontinues the Route 2, which operates in East Dublin. Currently, the Route 2 only operates 1 trip in the morning and 1 trip in the afternoon, designed for school tripper service. So this service plan would formalize those 2 trips as school tripper service, and the rest of the Route 2 would be permanently eliminated. And the Route 11, which serves East Livermore, and has not been operating since the pandemic, would formally be discontinued. And this would formally reduce the midday frequencies on several local routes to hourly service, which they currently operate today. And the schedule denominator would continue to stay at 15 minutes, meaning we would connect with BART perfectly, probably once an hour, imperfectly 2 or 3 times an hour. We would still maintain our good Wheels bus connections at East Dublin and at the Livermore Transit Center. You can go to the next slide, please. This is a map of what the network could look like. So we are differentiating frequency by thickness of line. So your thickest lines, your 10R, your 30R, are your most frequent service at 15 minutes. Your blue lines are your 30-minute service in the peak periods, and your green are every 60 minutes in the peak. This is a map of just the peak only service. There are corresponding service levels for midday. We did not create maps for the midday service levels, although those are articulated on our website and in this survey.
Where you go, 70 Rs going every hour?
The 70X, if you can move it would run, right now it's running, I believe, 2 trips northbound in the morning and 2 trips southbound. This would reinstate its pre-COVID levels of service, which is not, it's never been all day, but we did have more trips running in the peak period.
It's a matter of how many riders we have.
Yeah. So, if you could go to scenario 2, the next slide here. Oh, I'm sorry, before you do that. Routes in gray are discontinued. So we just wanted to be clear to the public when we went out and got comment, so they could see what the footprint of service is, what would look like in each scenario.
2 is going up the hill for Dublin.
Yes,
Is that a low rider?
that was, the Route 2 was identified for elimination in 2016 with the Wheels Forward due to low ridership. It was retained. And then since the pandemic was just reduced to a school tripper route. So scenario 2 is how frequent can we be? So this scenario increases your rapid routes every 10 minutes. So basically you're connecting to all the BART trains. So, you're coming in every 10 minutes on both routes. So you're ample opportunity to connect to BART. But because we're adding service to your core routes, it means that there's a trade-off. And so in this scenario, we would be reducing your local routes, 1, 3, 8, and 14 to operate every hour. This would also formally discontinue the 2 and the 11 as in scenario 1. But additionally, your 3 other express routes, your 70X, which goes to Walnut Creek, your 20X, and then your 580X would be formally discontinued. Your side note, your route to school trooper service would still operate. We do see good ridership there. Routes would continue to connect with one another. Your Wheels routes would still connect at the Livermore Transit Center. Buses would still connect with one another at the BART station. Your local routes would connect once an hour with BART, and your rapid routes would connect many, many times an hour with BART. And then we can show the next slide so you can see the map. And I think this is the correct map. So there's more gray on this map. You can see the 70X is now gray. So we would discontinue service out of the Tri-Valley. The 20X, which is your reverse commute out to Vasco and the lab, would be eliminated. And as I noted, your 11 and your 2 would also be discontinued, as would be your 580X. So your 580X runs from downtown Livermore to your BART station. It's been discontinued since the pandemic. So, and then the 30 and the 10, as you see in maroon, are at your 10-minute service levels. Okay, we can now go to scenario 3. So this is the opposite of scenario 2. It is, let's check in to see if Tri-Valley residents and bus riders want the bus to go more places. So in this scenario, we are proposing to match the BART frequency of every 20 minutes. And in doing so, we are able to restore some service in West Dublin and East Dublin and South Livermore. Both West Dublin and South Livermore particularly are transit deserts, if you will. There is no fixed route. East Dublin is very limited, north of Dublin Boulevard. The 580X would be restored with a modified alignment, and this would restore the Route 11 to the industrial area of Livermore and East Livermore with limited trips. Now we have a map here that shows no gray, very colorful, and again, thickness depicts frequency, but you can see your 10 and your 30 are at 20, and then what this does is change your local routes to every 40. So currently, many of them are at every 30 minutes, but we want to kind of continue to allow the buses to connect with one another and to connect with BART. So this would really shift that denominator from 1530, 4560 to 2040, 60. So some routes would see a slight reduction in their peak service, but this enables us to put resources in more places. So if you want to go to the next slide. All right, the JIPA considerations. The JIPA stipulates the allocation of transit service vis-a-vis service hours and states that they should be proportional to the population in each city. And it is no surprise to me, and it should probably be no surprise to some of you, that Dublin is quite underserved currently and in every scenario. So the JIPA range, if you look at that first row with Dublin, based on the 2020 census, where Dublin has seen, pretty significant growth, the city should be receiving 26.2 to about 35.4% of hours of service. And scenario 1, which is today's service level, they're at 19.4. Scenario 2 even further reduces that to 18.1. Scenario 3 brings that up brings it in the right direction to 21.7. So I won't read all of these stats to you, but I thought that it was important to bring this to the board so you could see that, so we see where we were and see what where each scenario would leave us. I do want to note, I had staff do a calculation of percent of buses in each jurisdiction, because hours are one thing and peak buses are very different. So Dublin does not have a lot of regular service, but does have quite a bit of school service, as does Pleasanton. And I don't have this on the slide, but if you looked at just today's service levels with peak buses, Livermore is at 25.3%. Dublin's at 30.5, and Pleasanton is at 44.3. So it's a very different metric. The JIPA doesn't stipulate peak buses, it stipulates hours allocated by jurisdiction, but hours aren't our biggest constraint, buses and bus operators are. So I just wanted to present a full comprehensive picture to the board with the JIPA considerations. And I can wrap up a few more slides here and then we can open it up. We've been very busy doing our outreach. We have an online survey that was launched, I think, the first week of September. We have been out in the community and happily, and folks are really happy to see us. They're glad we're there. We've been at Dublin Splatter. We've been at 2 farmers markets. We've been at 1 senior fair in Pleasanton last week, and we'll be in Dublin this Saturday. We've been doing transit center and BART station pop-ups. We had a stakeholder meeting last week. We're invited city staff and our Tri-Valley stakeholders to receive this presentation and to help us share the survey with their constituents and their networks. And there's the next slide. We have materials on buses. We have what we call car cards with a QR code that passengers can take a picture of, and that links them directly to the survey. You may have noticed that we have signs on some bus stops, about 50 high ridership bus stops. We've got signs in English and Spanish, again, really trying to get in front of our riders. As Mike noted in his presentation, 70% of our riders are low income. And so it's really important that we make this decision with their input. It's important to me that we make this decision with their input. Next slide, please. So your key milestones, we are closing the survey this Sunday, and we are receiving a final report on our outreach findings from our consultant around the 20th of the month. We will be asking the board to set a public hearing date proposed for December 4th. We are working with our legal team on the timing for board approval. We just had a meeting today that we ran out of time for, so we'll have another meeting tomorrow to finish that up. Worst case is the board would have your hearing at your, assuming you take action to hold that public hearing, you have that at your December meeting, and you may not take action until the January meeting. And we would be very excited to go live with your new network as early in 24 as possible. We are already out of sync with BART, given that BART changed their schedule a few weeks ago. We're monitoring our complaints. Haven't heard of many, so I think it speaks to how few people are actually moving between Wheels and BART, or that they're able to make those connections still. So that's a good thing. We didn't want to leave people with a terrible connection for too long. And I believe that ends my presentation, so we can open it up.
Okay, open public comment.
So we didn't receive anything via email. We don't have any attendees in this meeting through Zoom, and there's nobody here for public comment in the audience.
Perfect, then I'll close public comment and turn it over to the board. Comments from the board?
Who wants to go first?
Well, 3 in a row.
First of all, thank you for the comprehensive presentation and for doing the work. I am concerned a little bit about the fact that, we do have a stipulation in the JIPA that talks about balancing the hours. And none of these scenarios do that. Even if the scenario that is chosen by the public, recommended to us, approved by the board, were to be scenario 3, which gets us closer, we're still not there. I do understand that, you know, none of this takes into account the trippers. And that we are sending a significant number of buses to double time. That's about to change. We don't know exactly how that's about to change, but when Emerald opens, we do anticipate a significant drop in certainly the number of buses and the loops that we're gonna have to take. We don't know exactly what that's gonna look like, but given the density surrounding Emerald High, I think all of us are predicting a lower ridership to Emerald, a lower ridership to Dublin High, because a lot of those kiddos will be going to Emerald. And also hopefully fewer drivers making the trip across town and also parking at Emerald High. So I think us relying on the metric of, well, we're sending all these buses for the trippers is not a valid reason to not balance our hours as our JIPA stipulates. So I'm curious to hear when this comes back to us, how we're planning to address that in whatever, whichever scenario the public chooses. Because that clearly we've been out of balance for quite some time, and given the, you know, additional growth we're seeing out of Dublin.
And we may not be able to get there with this round, and I'll just say that. I spoke with our planners who are working on our long-range transit plan today, shared this slide with them. They have their direction to look at how to balance the JIPA hours in the long-range plan. I think we're taking steps. If we land on scenario 3, that is an improvement. To get there, in this effort would require an elimination of a route. I'd say the route 14, for example, that goes between Livermore and Dublin. So that it would be that type of a decision that would.
Right, and you know, I'm always loath to eliminate any routes, but we know how we got here, because eliminating routes. And then the other comment I would have that sort of ties the last item and this item together are, I think it's important to be doing, as you said, statistically significant surveys of all of our ridership to find out, you know, what would make them take the bus more. I mean, this is great, but we're hitting the community survey, but also asking them, you know, what would make you get on the bus? If you're not on the bus now, what would make you get on the bus? In addition to what would, you know, what would each of these scenarios do to your riding habits? Not just which one you like more the most, but when we hire the firm you're talking about, you know, what would get on the bus? What would make you stop riding the bus? You know,
The market segmentation survey on that's your right attitude. Yeah.
Thank you, but I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. Who would like?
Lots of good data. I was here when we did our complete transit override before, and we had a firm and they presented data that give you an idea how many riders were on this leg. And I remember specifically there's a business park in Pleasanton called Cole Center Parkway, and it had 2 people on it, and it helped make an informed decision. They actually approached the 2 people and said, you can catch the bus, it's just a block and a half away instead of right in front of your business. And it was a smooth transition other than generalized changes. For me, I want to make this be based on data and eliminating routes, if that's your route, can be a big deal to somebody. So I just want to make sure we take a step back and we use, I forgot the firm, but they're.
It was Nelson Nygaard,
Nelson Nygaard,
and they're doing our long-range plan as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
that Nelson Nygaard is the one that helped us with the planning decisions. And that's why we kept 70 going up 680 forever, because there was actually a lot of riders on it.
Right.
And so we might not be riders and we might not know people, but it was that connection to BART to get north and people were using it. We struggled with, let's just get them to San Ramon and let them take something in Contra Costa County. Maybe that's an option, is a 2-seat ride, but 1-seat rides are luxuries sometimes. So I'd like to have a little bit more, before you make route changes, I just want to slow it all down and make sure that we actually know how many riders are on these routes that you're considering eliminating. And it's fine if you want to narrow it down to 3 choices, but before those actual route changes occur, I'd like to know that. If I recall correctly, Dublin also, I think the school trippers are an important part of service to the area for the JIPA. And I read in the paper that the new high school won't open this year.
No, it'll open next year.
Yep, so it won't even open for another year,
Well, less than a year, but.
September,
not this-
August, so.
It's not this correct.
9 months. Oh, it's not gonna do it this year. Anyway, my understanding is it's gonna be for school year next year, if I understood that correctly. So that is a ways away when we're making decisions. No, we don't do this frequently, but I think that needs to be taken into consideration because we're making assumptions. Do people that live here want to go to this school? Do people live here want to go to that school? Especially to finish things out. You could live near the Emerald New High School and say, I want to finish my high school over at the other school. And then we're shuttling them still. So
Nobody's transferred.
just a whole lot of questions. I know I got an expert right here beside me.
It's
I'm taking
going
notes.
freshmen, then freshmen, sophomores, then freshmen, sophomores. So nobody that's like a current freshman at Dublin High is being assigned to Emerald for their sophomore year.
Okay. When we used that Uber Lyft option, that was heavily used by Dublin. And these are all things that, in my opinion, need to be taken into consideration. That the JIPA, however it was worded at the time, we never envisioned these Uber Lyft options. And we certainly never envisioned how popular the school troopers could be as they are in Pleasanton and Dublin. So those are to me things that are really important to take into consideration. I'm certainly no attorney, as our attorney knows, but I would just like to see them be a part of the scales when we're balancing all this out. And then when you had, Chrissy, sorry, executive director used the term that sometimes you time it just right for BART and sometimes it's close. Well, I don't know what close means because I was on BART last week going to ACTC in Oakland and the BART train was slow. It's because 3 police officers did a search, yeah. At least they did a search, but unfortunately, it meant that I had to wait 18 minutes at the next stop because I missed my 20-minute headway, right? So 18 minutes is a long time, 5 minutes is not, 10 minutes is different. So I would want some real information because I don't see anything wrong with waiting 8 minutes, but 18 seems like a long time. So what is close and what is exactly one time?
May I ask a question for clarification? So what I'm taking away is that whatever network that we are recommending to the board, that we include all the data about how many riders are currently using the service, if we are proposing something be eliminated, and that we speak to how, what the connectivity to BART and that wait time would be in the service option that we are recommending. Okay.
Like with 10 minutes, I know that this board would make a decision if 10 minutes is reasonable.
Yeah.
Sure seems reasonable to me,
Okay.
because by the time you walk up the stairs and so forth. But I'd like to see something that puts all the variables on the scale of balancing.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know, Michael, I don't know what you feel about the JIPA, but if you're providing a service primarily to one city, whether it's Livermore, Pleasanton, or Dublin, and that's primarily in that city, I think it should be a part of the scales to balance.
I think we know that. I'm not sure there's an exception in the JIPA for school tripper. I mean, I don't think it's excluded from the analysis, so I think, I
Right.
don't know if you have the numbers.
Well, no, I mean, Cyrus isn't here, so I don't want to misspeak, but
We'll come back, but I think it's a good point, and I think we can look at that.
It should be
And
there.
again, just to give the board different metrics, and you can all decide.
Right, because this one looked shocking, because obviously Dublin was underserved.
yeah,
And then you take, well, Livermore has very little school trippers.
right.
So that throws the whole balance,
Yeah.
the scales off. But that, what is it called when Uber lives on?
It's the well, it's now Go Tri-Valley. It
Go
was Go
Tri-Valley, thank
Dublin,
you.
and then for that too.
Wish it was Wheels in Motion, I really like.
That was the whole point.
That was the whole point, was
Eliminated.
because Dublin was
Yeah.
underserved, and
Yeah.
so Go Dublin was supposed to help with that.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly it.
But certainly the hours that the school troopers are running should be.
Yeah, and I believe that they are included in that, but they're so small. I mean, it is one school trooper runs 45 minutes.
Riders or you?
They run all day. You're out 10 and you're out 30, they run dozens of hours a day, and your school troopers are highly productive, short trips that are resource intensive.
If they were in Kentucky, they could be going to midnight.
Oh, no.
Like that disaster. So those are my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, dial-a-ride.
Yes.
What about dial-a-ride?
So dial-a-ride would not,
Service that we do.
it would not be impacted in any of these scenarios because you've adopted a very generous dial-a-ride service area that is,
I'm talking about balancing the
Oh.
scale.
um,
Those are still services of this organization.
oh yeah, for sure.
And we have our own, so we are actually on the light side of that because.
You have the Pleasant Rides, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just, again, try to be all encompassing.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Director.
You, that was really helpful for me, because I don't feel that I know the ridership of these different lines. I'm not familiar enough yet. And I think ridership absolutely should be the heaviest weighted. And I'm not very familiar with Go Tri-Valley. That gives an option for just an occasional rider to have another public transportation for.
Or for folk, for residents who live in a community that doesn't have fixed route service, it is an option.
So,
And we, as we know, we're gonna be evaluating that program because of exponential ridership increases. So we want to check in and make sure that's.
well, yeah, definitely ridership, I think, is just the biggest factor. But again, I'm still concerned that our school trippers are over impacted and don't have enough resource. And so I think all of that needs to be weighed.
This service plan did not account for the school trippers. We peeled them aside, but your point is not. We are still doing our data analysis for you to look at the load, so absolutely.
So I have a couple of things, but first I just wanted to say that Commissioner Tick, but I do believe we still have quorum. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Good,
It's,
okay.
yeah. more-
Then, my thoughts always are, I want more service, more frequently, and for it to cost less.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I would like to hear back is, what would it take for us to combine scenarios 2 and 3 together to actually have, like, what additional resources would it take? I know we won't have them now, but with long-term planning, is that a possibility if we have additional state funding or federal funding? I'm a big believer that, people take transit when it's convenient, and it has to be more convenient than driving, which is a very challenging thing to hit. But, we often talk about European transit systems, and those have very good coverage and are very frequent and usually are very inexpensive. We're not gonna hit that with our internal budget anytime soon. But I think it's important that we look at what would it take to get there.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing, because I do think, my preference would be that we are doing the combination of the more frequent and the coverage, because the smaller coverage map really concerns me for some of the reasons that were brought up. We are losing people who are probably very dependent on the transit. It might be a small number, but if the only way you can get to work is on the bus, and it's 3 people who now can't get to their work anymore, that is a life-changing thing for them. So I think while we're looking at the survey results, I don't know if it has anything about the scale of impact it has on people, or if we're just in conversations. Just really hearing the quantitative or qualitative data on what is it going to mean if we eliminate this line. And I think that matters for when we're making our choices. I do think our writers are the ones who are gonna determine this more than us. It's really going to be looking at what comes back. But I want us to take that holistic look at it. There might be scenarios that have an incredible impact on a small number of people and a small impact on a large number of people, that maybe it's worth doing a less optimal service because it has such a large impact on a certain population. So those are kind of my requests. Otherwise, I think that, it is a great look. I hope that we can do this actually more frequently going forward, because I do think it's important that we adapt as we continue along. And I theorize, I'm not an expert on this, you guys know more than me, but I theorize that we're going to see shifts in the usage of transit over the next 5 years, again, that are pretty dramatic. So.
Well, since I'm still struggling to understand, I'm just a little unsure when we're talking, I wasn't here when the survey was done that identified 2 riders for a large bus with 1 or 2 riders. I mean, the community is always talking about that. We see the empty buses going around. It's not more environmentally friendly to do that. It is not. And if the alternative that we have come up with is offering the Uber Lyft passes, that seems so much more cost effective and environmentally effective. Is that correct? So again, we're back to heavily weighting ridership.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges we have as staff is many of the routes that are on the table for elimination aren't running today. So the current ridership is 0. Your Route 11, your ridership is 0. Your Route 580X, current ridership is 0. Your 70X is at a really reduced level. I see that bus, there's 4 people on it. 4 people that rely on that route. Your 20X, very limited service. So we don't have, it's a little harder than what we did a few years ago because we had real granular data in present time. And here we are, that's why we're trying to connect with the riders, and we've definitely heard from folks. We don't, scenario 3, I'll share with you, is leading the pack with responses. It's only one piece of the equation, but folks don't seem to like to see the routes proposed for elimination. That's the feedback I received when I've been doing the outreach. But yeah, it's tough because we're also, you run a risk if we do scenario 3 and we restart Route 11 and you restart your 580X, they could be empty buses. And yeah, so that's why we also have to do this more often. We will restart our regular service planning cadence that has been kind of on pause for several years.
And I know we're going to farmers markets, you went to Splatter, we're doing all of this public outreach, and we are reaching people who don't necessarily ride bus. And we are asking them, which of these scenarios looks good to you? And if you don't ride the bus all the time, you're very altruistic and you say, well, people that ride the rapid, they can ride, that frequency can be 20 minutes instead of 15 minutes in order to let all these other people have their routes. All these other people that, get covered once an hour where it's not super convenient, and they say, I'm not waiting an hour for the bus, I'm gonna take an Uber or I'm gonna take a whatever. So my concern is that we are getting a whole lot of people saying that the scenario 3 is the right idea, who will never get on a bus. And are we serving, we did a great job of getting live people on the 30 and the 10 and some of these other routes to take our qualitative survey. Do you think the bus stops are clean, and all of that? And we got good responses. Are we doing the wheels in motion survey? I mean, I know we put cards up in the QR.
We're not
code
doing
and
it
all
in
that,
person on buses.
but it might behoove us to send a couple people out there and saying, please take this wheels in motion survey, please, 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 because I want to make sure that we're serving actual riders for our wheels in motion survey, because the last thing I want to do is have a whole bunch of people that feel really good about the fact that we're bringing back routes that nobody's riding, right? Where we've just reduced our frequency for the people who really are riding. I mean, I think that the real feel-good thing is, let's bring back routes, but if we don't bring them back at the frequency that is necessary to get people on them, we're gonna bring back a whole bunch of routes of empty buses.
I really appreciate that comment, because I, and staff can attest to this, I said, we have for me to feel good about this, we have to talk to riders. I want to talk to the community, but we need to talk to riders. As of last Wednesday, 60% of people who filled out the survey reported that they were a current or very recent rider of wheels. So I think that to me gave me a thought, like, okay, we are communicating with our riders. We have been doing pop-ups at the transit center and at BART to be out there interfacing with our riders, because you're exactly right. Folks, when they're surveyed, they often are very altruistic, and but I will say that speaking with actual 30 and 10 riders, they're like, yeah, we don't need to be more frequent to BART. Every route, the intent of the rapids at every 15 minutes is to connect with every BART train. At every 20 minutes, they still accomplish that.
And are we anonymizing the data? Obviously, we're anonymizing the data, but are we able to disaggregate the data so that we would be able to tell as a group, people who say they are a rider, as a group, this was their response.
Yes.
People who say they are non-riders, so
Yes.
that we'll be able to see if there's a huge disparity
Yes.
in
The crosstab we can do, yes, absolutely. And I will make a note to have that included in our recommendation.
Because if everybody that rides says they want scenario 1 and everybody who doesn't ride say they want
Yes.
scenario 3, that's a problem for us.
It would be a problem for me too.
I think, go ahead.
There's a little add-on, so, okay, I ride the 10R, which is between Pleasanton and Livermore, and they have no idea about the 70 that goes up to Walnut Creek. So it gets complicated, right?
Yeah.
But just it gets complicated, but so where I was going with this is the businesses that were using the 70 are in Hacienda, James Paxson, doing those outreach to the businesses is what we did at one time to connect BART. Hacienda pays a fee, and then everybody that's in Hacienda gets to take the Wheels bus for no cost, right? It's included in their fee. So going back to the large businesses that are in that area and going, is everybody upset not losing 70 or the time changing to the frequencies of BART? Just a little bit of an outreach to the businesses that have historically used it, and even the business park owners and developers and the big businesses that are in Dublin and Livermore. And what would it take for your folks to ride these back? Just a little bit different outreach, because if I'm a school tripper, I could care less about 70X. I'm just exaggerating, but 10X, they don't care about 70. And maybe nobody cares about 70. Then we have eliminated it, and they're not squawking, so I guess it's okay. But anyway, I just wanted to say how complex this is. I see how it just, it's challenging.
Have we sent the survey home with the parents? Did we do parents where, I mean, I don't know what the other school districts use, but did we send a message home through the school district to, hey, we've got a survey going out about the bus system in general? Take our survey.
We have in Livermore, but we can push that out in Pleasanton and Dublin. We can
Because
ask for.
the parents know, hey, the bus service might be expanding or might not be, that might be good information for.
Yep.
It's also a good advertisement.
Yes, everyone's been wonderful who we've spoken to. We had a stakeholder meeting, James Paxson joined last week. He's also pushing it out on his channels, and Stephen Dunbar was awesome. He's very engaged and he helps push it out. So yes, but great suggestions, great
I
feedback.
think the cities could do that too.
And they did.
We're working on and you guys are really good at this, about doing texting to people. And really starting to use social media, partnering with the cities, because we have a lot of members.
All 3 city managers actually attended my stakeholder meeting last week virtually. So that was wonderful. I was very happy to see that. And your staff too.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think, ultimately, whatever change we make will make some people unhappy and some people happy. Even keeping things the same makes some people unhappy and some people happy. So you have quite the challenge on your hands. I do think it's always possible that the final outcome is something that's not any of the 3 we have, and we find bits of the data in there that really point to, oh, we need, we want the more frequent routes, but we want to keep the 70X, for example, or something to that effect. We might find that as we're going through the data, so we should keep an open mind on that front. I do think, for me, and I don't know if everyone else would agree with this, and I'd like to get opinions, is I think having the information also disaggregated by city, because we might see things where, say, residents of Livermore who are often traveling a longer distance are much more interested in frequency and coverage, while residents of Dublin really would like to see more coverage because they're not getting much right now, and so it might also, I know it could potentially bring politics into this, which is not something we want to do, but I do trust this board to look at the data and say, oh, this sorts out that maybe it isn't one of the 3 scenarios we have, that it is some hybrid where we look at some changes, because we might see the different cities, I think, do have some different needs, and we might see the data bear that out or not. And I would
We
be
share
curious
2
about
BART
it.
stations and we don't right now, right?
Yeah.
So that could be the same.
So I'm making an assumption, but I would assume that a lot of the 30R and 10R riders, particularly for BART, are coming from Livermore often, but.
Or East Dublin.
Or East Dublin, yeah. So, but that's an assumption. I don't actually have any data for that.
And MTC is doing their OD survey, which is they do this every 3 to 5 years. It's statistically significant. It's an origin destination survey. It's on board. We asked them not to do it in September. We didn't want to confuse them with confuse our riders with Wheels in Motion, but they will be conducting the survey in October, and it's great data. So I'd be happy to share that once.
Yeah, we have a bunch of data nerds, so the more
That's
data
okay.
we get out of
You're
this, the better decision.
warming my heart. I love it. I love it. But this is an art as much as this is science. So.
Okay, with that, is there any further comments? All right, moving on to the executive report.
Okay, so I'll try to breeze through this quickly since we're almost at 5:30. Your fixed route ridership keeps going up. That's wonderful. We are at 70% of pre-COVID levels of ridership.
Eat your heart out.
Yes, Barty Karen is exactly right. We're seeing year-over-year increases, which is wonderful. And we're seeing a higher rate of increase on our regular routes than on our school tripper routes. So for a while, it was just the school trippers, which are very important. But we want to see those local routes, those empty buses get less empty. And so this speaks to keeping that 10 at 15-minute service that we reinstated that route or reinstated that service level in April, and we're seeing ridership increase as a result. I'm sure high gas prices are also continuing to help us here. In your Tri-Transit to School promotion, which as a reminder is a 4-week free ride promotion for students. It's perplexing to me. We saw a slight decrease from last year's ridership. I like to blame everything on humans, which is not always nice of me, but we do ask our bus operators to manually key in these rides, and when they have a crush load of students, sometimes that data collection may fall by the wayside. Nonetheless, it's still great. And I think I shared with maybe the Projects and Services Committee, we had higher ridership after the Tri-Transit promotion ended. So that was perplexing,
Which
but
makes us think even more that perhaps we weren't capturing every student that was taking.
yes,
the ride.
yeah, and parents might want to drop their student off for the first, few weeks. We will be issuing a press release about our Tri-Transit, also highlighting the Alameda County student pass, and that's and its availability. I think Mayor Brown, that was a comment that you had, wanting us to highlight the Alameda County student pass program. So I'll be working with David on a press release there. And in the same vein of schools, we continue to monitor our school tripper routes. I know, we are watching our loads. We're also watching out for safety concerns. And we've been working really closely with City of Pleasanton staff on addressing some issues that we have in the field. For example, buses having a hard time turning right when parents are lining up everywhere around a school. And I'm an offender of my daughter's school in San Ramon, but we've received permission, or the city will be working with us to extend some red curbs in Pleasanton, adding in some lane striping, and we actually received approval to remove trees at Dublin High. The city has said okay, Maureen has said okay, the school district has said okay. This would be removing some, they're not healthy trees. They are presenting a safety issue for our bus drivers. And so we are moving along on that project, so.
We already did trim the branches, right?
Yes, yeah. Moving to finance and administration, your staff had a wonderful team building workshop about a week and a half ago. We hired Insight Strategies, that is our executive coaching firm. They're also under contract to do 3 team building workshops with your staff. So we held the first workshop at the regional meeting room in Dublin at City Hall. We focused on team building activities, getting to know one another, communication, and building a positive culture. There will be 2 more workshops this fiscal year. I was at the Zero Emissions Bus Conference with Chair Hernandez in San Diego last week. It was really interesting, brought together transit professionals and vendors from throughout the country to talk about electric buses and hydrogen infrastructure. So I am so excited to get moving on our hydrogen, and I'll share with you that we are preparing an informational update to brief the board on all things zero emission, including our procurement schedule and the status of your Atlantis campus. So that will be coming to you this calendar year. Just trying to find the right board or committee meeting so we don't have too packed of an agenda. And then on Sunday, I will be flying out to Orlando along with Chair Hernandez and to attend the LAVTA Expo and Transform Conference, which is it's an annual conference, but every 3 years they have an expo. Again, lots of vendors. So very excited to meet folks in the hydrogen space. Definitely that's my priority while there, is to learn as much as I can about zero emissions. I'm also presenting on your One Seat Ride regional paratransit service on Monday, October 9th in the Expo Learning Center. And a reminder, we have our bus rodeo here in a few weeks. We have training on the 14th between the hours of 9 and noon. Director Testa, I know I'll circle up with you on your availability to get some training on how to drive a bus. As a reminder, the rodeo is on the 28th of October. The bus operator competition begins at 8 a.m. You're welcome to come for the whole show, but your moment will be around 11 a.m. where the board members who are able to attend and who desire to do so will compete in a shortened two-obstacle course. And so we are encouraging you to arrive by 10:30. We're looking into parking now, making sure we have enough parking. So I'll be reaching out with more information on that. But it's really exciting. We have 10 operators who signed up, 6 admin staff. Jennifer Yeamans is going to be driving in the rodeo. So she's very excited about that. She's taking it very seriously. And so it's and so it's exciting. We're getting all the vendors in line. We're gonna have face painting for kids who show up. So. And lastly, we just released an RFP for IT modernization and cloud transformation service. Great interest at our pre-proposal conference. Lots of vendors attended, and proposals are due October 30th. We are reaching out to city staff to assist us with evaluating those proposals. And highlighting your statistics, again, I noted your fixed route ridership is higher in August, which is great. On-time performance has slipped a little. You're at 85.3% in August. This is the school crunch that is, I think, slowly working its way out, but we continue to monitor that. We want to be higher than 85%. Just a couple other things to note. Your paratransit ridership is climbing. It's something we're going to watch. Paratransit is expensive for us to operate, so we just want to keep an eye on that. And your Go Tri-Valley also keeps going up, and so we are continuing to work with our partners. We've had some meetings. We had a meeting with Uber. We are scheduling one with Lyft to talk about the future of this program, some evaluation, some data we'll need for our evaluation, and also to make sure they're not doing any marketing on their own for our program. Your board look ahead, lots happening the next few months, given you've got a heavy finance and admin agenda for October. Tamara's been working diligently with our auditors on your annual comprehensive financial report. We just learned we're getting a TDA triennial audit this year, so lucky us. We've got 2 triennials coming up this year. And then in projects and services for your October meeting, working on a Wheels in Motion update, and I'm hopeful I can get you an SAB project update with a recommendation for the future of that project. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
A few things to jump around. On the board packet, page 94, you did hit the 83%, but my question is historical customer service survey results. I'm not sure if I understand it. It says this is a monthly summary, and there are many of these bars that fall well under 4. So it's October 15, November 16, December 17. Is this a look back in every
I
month?
think these are years, and I need glasses,
It says
clearly.
monthly, so I thought maybe.
Are you looking at the green chart?
Yeah, the green bar chart, October, November, December, November, June, and then.
On the bottom, it says fiscal year, so I think that's, I think what we can do is not have different months listed, I think we should have the same
That's what I
month.
think.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
well, thank you for noting that.
But that also shows December in 2021 significantly below 4.0, so I'm just a little surprised because that wasn't, I know we're not talking about this year, but we compared it to last year,
Yeah,
2022.
yeah,
If 2021 was really at 3.8 or something, that's interesting.
I think, and I recall, we just had your paratransit customer satisfaction presentation earlier this year, and I can't recall them, I think your marks were high, so.
This is just.
This is paratransit, yeah, on page 94 is your
It's just
paratransit.
paratransit.
In your, on page 93 is your overall satisfaction by fiscal
That's
year. But again, it does, I'm noting now it stops at 2019, so I think we need to update these charts
Right.
for.
That'd be great.
so I will-
And then going further, my question for Go Tri-Valley monthly trips. This has been indication, Mike wasn't quite ready because the numbers continue to rise. Yeah, when is this gonna go to projects and services? You're working on it, which I am appreciative.
Yeah,
But we need to have a call.
my goal, well, it's communicated to staff that they'll start an evaluation on the program by the end of this calendar year. So we have a lot of data now. It just takes some data mining. We have a very bright intern who is going to help us with that. So I'd like to bring a recommendation to the committee in the early part of the new year,
Okay.
if that's acceptable.
Well, it's on the list. That sounds great for me. Question for the attorney. We had Zach calling from a remote location. Was that the Heritage House? Was he calling in from a
He's a
specific?
consultant.
He's a board member.
He's not a board member. I mean, he's not a member of this body. He's like a staff
So he can
report.
call
He
in
can call in.
from anywhere. Okay, that's good to know, even though he's calling as a TAC member.
Doesn't matter.
Just checking.
He's not a member of this.
And then I'd like to have a discussion sometime. We don't really have a problem with this board, but some boards do, about opening it up to public comment for people who aren't in the room. So maybe we can agendize it or something. Okay, all right. Thank you. That's it.
It could be you, those two,
Whatever, I'm trying to avoid some of the difficult situations
Yeah.
and still leave it open to the public. So whatever that looks like. Okay, trust you.
Any other comments on the executive director's report? Okay, then moving on to matters initiated. So I got one from. Any other matters initiated by the board or by staff? Seeing none, moving on to the next meeting date is scheduled for November 6th, 2023, and we are adjourned.
Nice job.